listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Thanks, everyone, for finding Making Data Simple. Al Martin here. It's a rainy day in Kansas City where I am. And I am speaking with Simon Lightstone today, who I think is in Toronto. How's the weather there in Toronto, Simon?
For Toronto, it's awesome. No snow, late summer.
Is that the threshold? Is like just no snow and it's good?
Yeah, more or less.
I got it. So Simon is the offering manager for DB2 on Cloud. He is an IBMer. We try to spread the wealth in terms of having IBMers as well as others in the industry come onto the podcast. The reason we chose Simon is we want to talk to him about bringing the startup culture to a big or small organization. Doesn't matter, any organization, but certainly from IBM standpoint, a big organization. He's got a unique mindset that I find very interesting. We talk quite often. So first off, thanks for being here, Simon. I appreciate your time. Why don't I let you take a few minutes to kind of introduce yourself?
Okay, sure. So I'll introduce myself and my roles both in startups and at IBM. So I founded a startup called IQ Storage. Ultimately, that got sold to a competitor. Then I kind of took some time off and was a consultant. And finally, I joined IBM initially as a cloud architect. And pretty rapidly, I was moved into offering management, which is what IBM calls sort of business line management or perhaps product management. So yeah, I started my startup when I was very young. I was still a teenager. And, I went through that path. And there were a lot of really interesting things you learn. And then going from there to a big company, you really start taking for granted the things that you had in the startup land. But even more, it also helps you realize a lot of the benefits of working for a big corporation. But most of a sudden in a big corporation, priorities, you have to fight hard for your priorities not to change. Because as I'll talk more through this, really at a startup, you're so focused on growth that you just don't have time for anything else. It's just selling, product development, and anything else really has to be cast aside. Whereas as soon as you go to a big corporation, there's a lot of other things like logistics that come into play. And it's quite a battle to make sure you're always keeping growth ahead of all other priorities.
All right, fair enough. I've got a couple comments already. Let me ask one question before I jump in. Do you like grilled cheese sandwiches?
Oh, I love grilled cheese sandwiches. I'm a big fan. In fact, I wrote a blog.
Yeah.
So if you check
I'll get back to that question. I figured you might like grilled cheese sandwiches. That's why I asked the question. My interpretation of what you just gave me is, look, I started I created or constructed a startup. We did well. We got bought out. I became rich, and then I took some time off and came to IBM to play around. Is that true?
I think that's an oversimplification. No comment further.
Okay, fair enough. And by the way, I know you are very active on, at least I've seen you very active in your writing, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Let's start with the startup, because I think your history does have relevance here as you go into the notable differences that you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about founding that startup, how you went about creating a company? I believe it was in cloud backup and file storage. Can you tell us a little bit about it, what you learned and what to do and what not to do?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I got the idea because I was traveling a lot and I felt I always needed my data with me. In fact, it got to the point where I was like, okay, what do I need more? My files or my physical items? And I realized I really needed my files. So that's where I built out IQ Storage, which was initially a file sharing, a bit like an earlier version of Dropbox. And that's where the idea came. In terms of the mentality, so with the startup, you really start with nothing. So you think initially, oh yeah, I'm going to have an idea. I'm going to throw it out there. I'll get like 7 customers in the first month. Then, I'll be modest, maybe we'll get 50 in the second month. It doesn't work like that. Basically, the one thing that you realize as soon as you start anything, whether it's even an internal product line in a big company or a startup, is nobody cares. They don't care. They don't know who you are. And you realize that your whole life you've had this bias, which is that you think, oh, Facebook did well because they had such a great product, and that's all there was. You think, okay, Dropbox did well because they're such a good product, and that's what did it. But in fact, it's very, very hard to get attention for any product line, whether you're a big company or a small company, and to really start that momentum. And so then begins the great fight when you sort of realize that this void that people are not going to sign up or care about my product unless I really get in their face, make a very clear statement, and frankly, figure out a growth engine to grow it. And that is where the main challenge is. I think very few companies fail chiefly because of product. Their product is what enables them to grow and maintain competitiveness. But chiefly companies fail because they don't have growth engines to build them up. And that's really, you kind of learn that the hard way. Now, to be number one, obviously you need to have a great product. But before that, you need a growth engine. So just as an example, you may be wondering, what the heck did I do to get awareness? Well, first I tried a whole bunch of things that didn't work. It actually took, luckily I was still young. I was, living in my mom's basement, which is a huge advantage. And I tried one thing after another until I finally tried a few things. First, I tried putting ads in a local magazine. That totally failed. It was a local technology magazine. I don't know if they exist anymore. And that costed, about $1,000 of very hard earned money as a camp counselor. Then I went to that same magazine and I put a classified ad. I got a few customers who paid me $100 a month till basically I sold the business. And so it's a good example of how even a subtle change in your approach, you really need to experiment. How I really grew the business then was through Google cost per click, and then through really just talking to IT resellers who will resell my product. But really cost per click was the main engine. And so I learned a lot about digital marketing. And keep in mind, a lot of people out there who may be hearing this may have tried cost per click for their own company and had mediocre results, or for their own startup. All I have to say is that you really need to be obsessed with your marketing engine to get out all the little wrinkles until finally you turn it around into something that has a solid ROI. So you can't just, in my opinion, hire an agency to do your advertising for you. You need to be obsessed with it for a little while until you get that engine refined. Just one example is, with my cost per click, I would put the price in the ad, right? That would mean that if somebody's going to click that ad and charge me $1, then I've already qualified that lead. That let me compete against way bigger competitors and really always be in the number one spot. There's a lot of things like that which you sort of learn as you go. I'm going to pause there and
No, that's fine. That's fine. So we'll get to the growth engine. I think it's relevant just to talk to your product just a bit. It was a cloud backup and a file storage business, if I understand what you're talking about. And it was in the same vein as Dropbox. Is that what you said?
I would say so. We started off as something that was similar to Dropbox, but it was, much more basic at the time. It did FTP hosting, sort of a more basic web interface. And then afterwards, I also branched into online backup, and that was more enterprise grade. I really hit that niche hard. And that's where, we did, backup for all sorts of different things like Microsoft Exchange. This is basically a cloud backup system where you just install the agent, so to speak, on all the machines in your company. And then every day it will automatically back up all the data on that to the cloud. And that was the essential recipe for the online backup portion.
So did it branch into backup? In other words, you started with the hosting and the interface to the hosting service. Was it backup to that hosting service, or did you venture into backup and then just, provide backup for anyone?
Good question. So, I quickly realized that B2B was a way easier focus area for me. So very early on, for this file storage service, which you could really think of as box.com or Dropbox, for that, basically that was a web-based interface with FTP attached, right? And that was growing well, but I kept on seeing this market opportunity for online backup, and my customers kept on wanting to do a bit more with the product and use it to back up their whole computer. And that product just was not quite robust enough to be a managed enterprise-grade backup system. And so that's where I kind of took the leap to create a second product line and sell the online backup. And that's where that really happened.
So in the end, where did you do better in business-wise? Was it the backup or the actual hosting of file storage?
The backup definitely overtook things, right? So that started growing pretty quick. But, both product lines were pretty strong. And, the goal was, of course, to get customers using both of them. But the backup definitely took off. Now that market has sort of faded away a little bit as things become cloud native. But you can imagine, at that time, it was very, very popular because there was no box.com where you can easily edit files online. People really needed to back up all their servers in a very, very simple way.
Yeah. So I got, what year were we talking here, if you wouldn't mind?
I think that it was around, man, you're testing me here. It's probably 2013 was the date.
That's not that long ago. So you're a young man.
Something like that. Oh yeah, I'm fairly young. Depends on your opinion of what young is.
Yeah. So. All right, so fine. I mean, so like any good business or any good startup, the reason I asked that question, it's interesting to me. It's usually most startups start with one product, or many do, and then head in a completely different direction. Like, for example, if you look at the history of Slack, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, the analogy that I think I read once is you throw a dart at the wall and to the product that's going to drive the most revenue and market expansion, and then you move the board over to it. You move the dartboard over to the dart versus throwing the dart at the board, if that makes sense. That's probably a bad analogy. But any good business, you found another area to expose, which was the backup. You went in that direction. Were you working during your startup when you first started? Or did you just say, look, I'm going all in, and slept in your mom's basement and went from there?
Yeah, well, a huge advantage I had was I was, a teenager, was like 18, 19 at the time. So I didn't have any work to quit. And in fact, the bigger question was school. And I did, and I think this was actually a mistake. I did stay in school, even though that was really the height of the growth of the business. And otherwise, who knows what would have happened. But it's all a matter of personal choice. I was actually very good at delegating so that I was able to continue, full-time studies and also run the business, right?
So kids, this is one man's opinion. But why would you say, hey, you think staying in school was a mistake?
Well, interesting. The main reason it was a mistake is this. We human beings often have a false sense of urgency. Nothing stopped me from, leaving school, taking 2 years to really focus on this, grow it full time, raise a huge round and, be the next Box.com. I could have done that. And you know what, if it didn't go well, I could have gone back to school 2 years later. I'm older now. I wouldn't have made a difference in my life. But somehow we get into this crucible and then we think, oh, wait, I can't leave school. I will not be a quitter. I will not fail. I will go through this crazy computer science program and I'll just take it all on. In fact, I would say that for those of you who are in those sorts of forks in the road, if you're thinking of doing something that you really want to do, there will never be a good time to do it. The traffic lights will never line up green. You really have to take a step back and say, you know what, is this really a big deal? If I have a business idea I want to pursue, or if I have an internal career path in my organization that I've always wanted to pursue, maybe I want to be in sales or move to product management or whatever, then, it probably isn't as bad as you think to just drop what you're doing and move there wholeheartedly. And I would say, and that's why there's no risk to leaving school. I mean, we call it dropping out, but there's tons of people who leave school for a few years and then come back. So I basically took a situation where I had zero risk and didn't pursue it. And that's why I think in retrospect, that would have been the right move.
Well, I think everybody has a sense of urgency. You feel like, hey, if I have to come back later, how old will I be? As my time pass, that kind of thing. And it is hard to go back. But I got to believe that there was some element of the schooling that you went through, particularly in computer science, that contributed to the outcome of your business. Yes? No? Maybe
no.
not?
So just being honest, the creative answer would be yes, I learned. But the truth is that the one thing I did learn is I learned really how to delegate very well. I learned how to focus on only the important things. And really make sure that I build a self-managed business rather than sort of holding it up all by yourself, right? And that's, I think, one lesson that I did learn.
Oh, you had to prioritize. There was no way you could make it otherwise. But who'd you have to delegate to? Did you start hiring immediately? I figured you'd be delegating to yourself there for some time.
No, pretty quick once. So again, it's the first year was the hardest part, figuring out your growth engine. Once I was there, I had an operations manager who I just really delegated everything to, and that was really it. In fact, even early on, as soon as I started getting traction, I actually hired one of my friends who at that time were both in high school, right, to help. Brilliant guy, and that also helped. I would say if you're, a lot of people say, don't hire or don't delegate. I think that's a mistake. I think that if you really trust yourself to move a company forward and focus on growth, you do need to move some of those other tasks to those who really enjoy doing them and who are really good at them. And that, that's whether you're in a big organization or whether you're in a small organization. And so that's my view. Get them to share the workload because there's just a lot of work.
No, I certainly get your point. So you talked to the journey, and I got to believe that you felt like you had a pretty good product. But where I'm going to go with is the growth engine, but the product you felt was sound. About what time, how long did it take you to get the product in such a state that you felt like it was sellable? It was just about heading to that growth engine that we're going to talk about next.
Good question. It took me about 3 to 6 months, which is really short in retrospect. But somehow, when you're just working in your mom's basement and there's nothing else for you to do, then you can code really quickly, right? So that's the situation. Yeah, so it was about 6 months. I'd say typically startups might need a slightly longer runway. Though come to think of it, I would say a lot of MVPs now are probably created in like a 2 to 3 month period.
I picture you just in this like cellar, myopically focused on trying to get this product complete. How far is that from the truth?
That's the exact truth. In fact, that's what it was. But you know what? I loved it. I finally had a chance to focus 100% on a problem. And when the human brain does that, it can do things that you could never imagine. So, yeah.
And then you yell upstairs, say, "Mom, meatloaf, Mom."
Oh yeah, it wasn't like that, but I mean, there were some things. So, for example, my mom made me do chores around the house, like watering her plants and this and that. And so I had this employee, my first employee, and so I started delegating my household chores.
Oh my God.
To this employee. And so my mom comes home, she sees my employee watering her plants, and she just got furious. She's like, I was like, well, hey, listen, I have to really focus on this other stuff, but it was not taken lightly. Yeah.
It was probably your buddy. She probably thought you're just making your buddy water your plants. Or her plants.
Yeah. Like I should have that would have been a great excuse, right? But I think she probably knew what was going on. But
nice. All right. So that brings us to the growth engine. I think that's a good setup. And the reason I think it's a good setup is because how I know you, and when we're in offering management discussions, you are maniacally focused on that growth engine and things we should be doing differently for our products. And obviously that the history that you have has led you to that point, because there must have been a time, and you've kind of alluded to this fact, when you were developing the products, you had a product, but you just couldn't get it to grow. And then at some point in time, you had to pivot and just put all that energy into that marketing engine to get it out there. And that led you to all the experience that you have in the various ways to do so. So you were obsessed with this marketing engine, and I'd like to talk about that, because the question is there's so many different avenues out there. How do you choose which avenue to take? How do you find the most value in which direction, and apply balance before you go broke in doing so?
Excellent question. The answer I find is initially you have to combine sort of your intuition with trying everything very, very quickly. In fact, I would say for those who are thinking of pursuing an idea, whether it's for you're being an intrapreneur, an idea for your own organization, or an entrepreneur where you're going out and doing it yourself, it's actually very similar. The first thing you should do is try selling something similar that's very simple. I'll give an example. Right now, I could maybe have an idea for the eye toaster. I think the eye toaster is a great idea. Before I start, raising capital or putting all this work into the eye toaster, just put an ad on Craigslist saying, eye toaster, $20, call me, and see if there's any responses there, right? Put a few Facebook ads. Just get a designer, a web designer, to make a mock-up if you can't do it yourself. It's very cheap. You can go to a site where like 99 Designs or similar, where you can just hire a freelancer to do this, and get a mock-up of your toaster, of your eye toaster, and then put Facebook ads, put Craigslist ads. If you want to try calling wholesalers, nothing's stopping you. Again, we haven't invested a penny in the product itself. What we're doing is finding a growth engine that works, right? And I think that what many people will find is they'll be very surprised. Oh, there's nobody interested in an eye toaster, right? Or the people who are interested in eye toasters actually aren't willing to pay more than $5, which is not going to get me anywhere. And I mentioned this in my blogs, but you really want to practice selling and practice penetrating your market before you invest that money. And this is for a big corporation like IBM. We do this in a slightly different way, and that's by really talking to our customer Rolodex and trying to get a commitment from them before we build out a product, or at least making sure we have some traction before. But you'd be quite shocked. A lot of people take the plunge when they pursue a new idea, internally or externally, and that's really quite dangerous. The hard work is not where you should be building the product. The hard work should be validating your market and your go-to-market approach. That's my view.
No, I think you're right. From my experience, most want to skip that step for whatever reason. They go into the product because they're so confident. Now that you say that, first when I was hearing you talk, I thought, well, how could you be that confident in a product? But the way I'm thinking now, and the way you describe it, is that a lot of people have that confidence because they want to get on to creating something versus trying to test it and spending money on something that doesn't exist today yet, even though it should be like negligible and very negligible in relative comparison. So, got it. A couple comments I would want to make. I thought you wrote a blog that was pretty cool on this, and I think it's kind of encapsulates what you were talking about here. So I thought I'd walk through that a little bit, and maybe we can add some more color to some of your experience. I think the blog was called 8 Ways to Grow Your Startup Much Faster Than Your Competitors. I think what I do is walk through the steps, and you could, make some of your comments and talk to your experience as to why you came up with the blog and why you think these are the steps. Fair?
Sounds good. Sure.
All right. First, it says try selling something. So that was essentially what you just characterized. Anything more that you had added to that?
Nope. I think that I covered it again. Just some resources there. Just find a designer to make a mock-up if you need. And then remember, you can always have something along the lines of, pre-order, click here, or you can use Kickstarter. I talk about that a bit there. You can use Kickstarter as well. And one other thing I'll mention is, again, whoever does this, again, whether it's for an idea you have internally or externally, put your creative juices here. How can I validate the market for this product before I build it? And that's where you've got to use your creativity, right? And do keep in mind that if you find that growth engine, have high standards. If you have a great idea, it'll sell 100 times over with, one Facebook ad. It won't be like a trickle, right? So wait until you really find that engine that's very, very effective and fast. And of course, I want to mention that, don't be afraid to fail here, right? If you have a great idea and you find that there really isn't any good channel to market, then don't keep pushing that idea, pivot a bit, and then find something else.
But it sounds like you skipped that step and learned from it. Did you not?
I did, and it was terrible. I mean, you suffer greatly, and I think this is what every entrepreneur learns, right? At first, just pursue their passion, and then they realize, wow, this is really hard. And that's why it took me literally a year until I found that engine, right? But my second product, of course, then I kind of knew that, and I spent a lot of time validating and getting, resellers on board before I even did much of the development. Again, I worked with them and just had some screenshots and things like that, and I made sure that it was something that they were willing to sell.
So by the second product, you actually went out there and validated the market space for it then.
Yeah, because at that point, you learn, man, most of this risk is, there's a lot of risk in not validating. Yeah.
Can you tell me how you did that? Did you go out there and for a backup went on Craigslist or something that just didn't seem to fit? You must have done something different for that.
Right. So, I guess I was talking more generic product.
Yeah, I get it.
The B2B market. So what I did was I already had some resellers, who from IQ Storage. So I approached them. In this case, I made my own mock-ups, which was, you can use Photoshop or other tools to do it. But really, I'd just hire somebody through Craigslist and talk to a designer and say, listen, I want a quick mock-up. And can you just make it for me, work out something, could even be under $100 in cost. And basically use that so people can visualize your product. Another tool that you can use is Balsamiq to really make these mock-ups. And then I went to the resellers I knew, but I also did a lot of cold calling, right? And now, of course, cold calling, it's funny. Some people say never cold call. Other people, I know business people who've made fortunes cold calling, even today. Now, obviously, the key here was I was cold calling IT companies, and that's a lot easier because they're looking for clients and they're quite open to finding another product to sell so they can differentiate themselves. So I just literally picked up Yellow Pages and started calling IT companies, across Canada and finding them. And then I would, basically meet with them using an online meeting tool and show them the mock-ups and see if it's something that they want to sell. Now, obviously, I'll be honest with you here. With the ones I didn't know where it was a cold call, I didn't tell them that this is nothing more than a Photoshop mock-up. I said, this is the product that we're developing. It'll be available in, 6 months. I didn't tell, they assumed that there was a lot more to it. And sometimes you've got to, politely do that in an appropriate way because you just really don't want to invest until you have a fit in advance. And that was a process. And I think that can be replicated, at a big company like IBM. If we have an idea, we can get a set of clients and sort of co-develop it like that. And the thing is, you have to be a little strict. You do have to say, look, will you pay upfront? Subscribe to this, right? As a reseller, people are always going to be positive, and you kind of have to be hard on yourself and a little bit hard on them even to make that commitment to really make sure you're validating properly.
What do you think your percentage hit rate was for cold calling?
Oh God, I mean, low. You have to be ready to get rejected 100 times a day. I mean, I'd make 100 cold calls a day. I'd actually set that as a goal. Afterwards, I cut it to 50. And then frankly, after I got a few key resellers, I just went to digital marketing because it's less painful than, getting rejected tons a day. But I'd say you do need to, it's about numbers. You have to cold call 100 a day, right? And then you'll definitely find a bag of, one or two opportunities in that bag, and only one of those will pan out. So I'd say about 1%. Right. But the key is it's still a one-time action which yields repetitive growth, because you get that one reseller. And I think we see this, with IBM partners. You educate that one IBM partner really well, or you educate that one reseller really well, then they will actually sell your product for you and generate their own revenue stream, which you'll take a part of. So those sorts of things where you have a one-time action that then results in recurring growing revenue is a very powerful model to keep in mind.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
All right. So that was number one. See, now we're on number two. Use a platform. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Okay. So this is especially for, this applies to really internal and external equally now that I think about it. People love having an idea and then building it perfectly from scratch. But in truth, you really want to focus only on your differentiator. So, and I think at IBM, we've learned that a little better than perhaps some other companies. But for other companies on the call, and especially if you're doing your own thing, make sure you sort of build in big pieces. Don't build your own web framework, right? Use Django, which is already there. Use IBM Cloud, which provides a great platform to build apps in. So that way you don't have to build your own management system. And now it's a bit more common, right, to do that sort of thing. When I wrote that article, actually, it was a bit more controversial. Am I going to tie myself to the IBM cloud with this project because, hey, maybe I can do it more cheaply myself by running servers in my basement or something, right? But now more than ever, you really want to invest in a platform. And in fact, I would say just looking at incubators and the success and failure rate, the ability to leverage a good platform, and I mean development platform and cloud platform, similar to IBM Cloud, which would be a great one, really will make the difference between you being able to get your MVP out quickly and being able to keep you and anybody you work with really focusing on the important things and not micromanaging your servers or anything like that. So that's why it's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Got it. All right, Simon, number 3, use a landing page service. What can you tell us?
Right. So the reason you want to use a landing page service is it's really tempting for you to go in with your developer or yourself if you're a developer and spend hours and hours on your landing page to improve your conversions. And frankly, you probably still won't get conversions as good as you would with just a landing page service. And the landing page service, it just saves so much time. They're, $5 to $100 a month, and a decent one is probably in the $25 range. And what you can use that landing page for is whenever somebody clicks a Facebook ad, they'll go to that landing page, and that landing page will have either a sign-up form or perhaps point to your main page, but it will let you really optimize your funnel, your sales funnel. And another thing that I see, and again, this is kind of better at the beginning of your product, is to use the landing page as your main page even, right? I'd go that far because you're going to get a lot of organic search and you really want to convert that. The reason I advocate this is that it's just so important to convert traffic well and to understand what people are thinking in your product. And also the cost of doing it yourself by constantly recoding, constantly moving buttons, and whether you're doing it yourself with a developer, it will kill your ability to move quickly. And that's why I mention it as a critical element in terms of really getting your company going, especially if it's a digital focused lead generation sort of company.
Did you originally start out doing this by yourself?
Yes. So originally I kept on, I did it myself, where I had somebody who would program the site for me. And as you can imagine, it was so much work to constantly change it so that way we are converting our leads effectively, and that's where I really learned that the cost is you won't have a perfect landing page, right? And again, great is the enemy of good. I think that's Peter Bradford's setting, but it really applies here. And when you have a product, you want it to be so perfect initially but you've got to let go. You've got to just have those landing pages adjusted really quickly and really easily so you can get your growth engine going. And I learned that the hard way by pouring tons of money and my own time into constantly tweaking a landing page.
How much venture capitalist funding did you get with this project when you started? Did
Good
they
question.
provide that? Yeah, go ahead.
Good question. So none. I actually, believe it or not, this was before venture capital kind of really existed in Canada. Banks just laughed at me. They're like, okay, where are the hard assets in the business? And I was like, there's very few hard assets, right? It's all labor, which is going to be burned away. And at that time in Canada, it's changed so much. Now you can easily raise capital. So I basically had like $5,000 in camp counselor money, which is a lot. I even saved a lot. And then I got another $5,000 actually just as a silly little summer company program that the province of Ontario, it's like Toronto, Ontario, gave out, which was designed sort of to like teach people how to start a business over the summer. Ironically, so that was it. That was my 10K seed. And then I was also lucky that, I had no overheads. I was just a guy sitting in my mom's basement with free rent and free food. So I had a lot of time to just figure things out. And also at that time, Google AdWords was very cheap, right? And so I was able to get much higher conversion rates in the beginning, and that really helped sort of set a platform. Once I built up that revenue stream, it was a lot easier to reinvest the profits.
Well, the bad news is you didn't get the investment that you were looking for, maybe even some guidance that you could have needed to learn some of this experience. The good news, you went through it, and we have you today for the experience that you have as an outcome, and I think you did all right. So number 4, let's go to number 4.
Yep.
Get a co-founder. This is when you call your buddy in high school and say, hey, look, are you doing anything?
Yeah. So you must do this. And if it's an internal project, again, I would say get an internal co-founder. Get this. You have a great idea for your company. If you want me to talk about it soon, but there's a lot of really great reasons to start a product inside a company. It's a lot of fun, and you get a lot more resources off the bat, right? So whether it's an internal project or an external project, you must get somebody to share the workload. I know what you may be thinking. Oh, but it's my idea. Oh, it's this. I would say off the bat, you really want to find somebody to partner with. And just remember, it's always better to have a small piece of a big pie than a big piece of a little pie. And the amount of work will be excruciatingly high. So you absolutely must do that. Good
advice. Number 5, focus only on one thing. Didn't you violate this yourself?
Yes, I did violate it. And I did violate it.
And you did well because of it. Now, wait a second.
Yes.
You take that back?
So no, because here's the thing. When I did make that switch, I was already really focused on one thing, which was file storage, right? Like online file storage. And keep in mind, I had so many other passions. And this is a very common thing for everybody. And I had so many other passions. So yeah, after many years, I switched to online backup, but I was tempted to switch to social media. I was tempted to switch to, building cool robots, or adding features in different directions. So I still was very, very focused. I had like B2B, strictly file storage. I was not going to get into the knife fight of the consumer market. Then when this other opportunity emerged, I very carefully with my focus decided to leverage that as well. But keep in mind, at that point, I already had a lot of momentum, with the first product. So, and they're so related that it made a lot more sense. What I see often is entrepreneurs who really have more than one idea, and they do an idea for 6 months while it's cool, but then afterwards their mind sort of wanders, right? And that's really dangerous. Unfortunately, being an entrepreneur, having your own startup is a lot more boring than working for a big company. And I know that might be like, hey, that can't be true, or hey, don't say that. But that's just the truth. When you have a startup, sure, the first 6 months, you've got the latest and greatest technology. Nobody else has it. You're totally innovative. But by the time you get out there and the time you uncover all the other competitors who also were emerging, and by the time you're in the market for 2 or 3 years, it's not like you can just switch to a different department. You're stuck with that idea for years and years and years and years. And when you think about what that's like in contrast to IBM, today I work on DB2 on cloud. I love it. I don't think I'm moving from here, but hey, next year if I wanted to, I could switch to work on quantum computing, or I could work on, IBM Watson Health, all these interesting things. Or I can go from a product manager role to a different interesting role. Maybe I'd like to do sales and close, IBM is well known for just closing huge deals, which are really exciting. Keep in mind, as a startup, it's hard to see this from the corporate world, but it can get very, very hard to stay focused and focus on selling the same darn product day after day. But you've got to do it, and you've got to commit to that promise you made to yourself to really focus on that one technology and not get sidetracked.
All right, I got it. Number 6, go to an incubator. And does that mean go to your mom's basement?
No, that's a terrible incubator. It's a great place to focus on work. So yes, I wasted a lot of time learning things the hard way. And the right move was to go to an incubator. Those didn't exist in Canada at the time, but now they do. An incubator is just a place which sort of incubates companies, and they keep you there for 1 month to 1 year, and they sort of just set you straight. And the reason you want to go there, trust me, until you go there, you might think it's not a big deal. But once you go there and you have a few conversations with people, you'll see the power. It's not the incubator or the staff that they provide. It's the other founders who are solving the same problem, who are also trying to figure out, this whole digital marketing thing and how to grow faster and faster. It's also the fact that if you're raising capital, which today I would suggest that you should raise capital, you probably shouldn't use your own money for a business past a certain point. Then rather than having to meet with all these investors individually, which is very, very hard and time consuming, the incubator sort of has a central place where investors will come in, where you'll get a certain Rolodex and be able to talk to people. And fundraising is a full-time job on top of your other full-time jobs. So being in an incubator, just the time you save by having quicker access to those investors is very valuable. And of course, another thing is that for those who are raising capital, valuations are actually very scientific. A lot of people think you can walk into a room, give a great speech, and then get a few $1 million because you have a good product market fit. Actually, it's a lot like the stock market. Valuations are quite precise, and you need to talk to other startups in your incubator about the valuations they've gotten to make sure that you're getting a good deal, right? So incubator is going to be absolutely critical. And anybody who says don't go to an incubator, just don't listen to them. You must go.
Did you go to an incubator, or where did you go to get guidance? I guess you didn't have incubators, you said, in Canada at that time, so maybe that's a moot point.
When I was running IQ Storage, I then actually did spend some time in a Waterloo incubator, and that's when I walked in there, and in one day I realized I should have came there way earlier, right? Like when I was younger, because I just learned so much in one day, right? And this unbelievable amount of data, right? And sometimes it's just that one contact to an investor that can make all the difference.
I mean, how did you identify that you were getting the right evaluation for your company when you sold it?
Good question. There's two types of valuations, and it's very important not to confuse them. One is your valuation when you're raising funds, okay? The other one is the valuation if you sell or exit a business, right? Now, when you sell or exit, I would say it's, I'll start to finish. I'll start with when you raise money. Now, keep in mind that with IQ Storage, after a while, again, I broke my own rule. I had an idea to do a startup with my cousin, mostly because we had the summer together, right? And we actually, built something called Snipia. It was actually kind of like a precursor to Slack, and we probably should have continued pursuing it. And I went to Waterloo Incubator. We did get an offer. We decided not to take the offer because at that point it was just a summer project. And actually I raised capital. Like I got an offer faster than I thought. And then for a number of reasons, he had a job offer. I had IQ Storage, which was an existing business that was growing. And I felt it was better for me to stay focused and not pursue this other venture. And similarly, he was like, well, I had the summer off, but now I just graduated. I want to see what the world is like. So in the end, we did not pursue it. That was probably almost certainly a mistake. But from that, yeah, I mean, what you should do is valuations change all the time, and they're higher than you expect. Keep in mind, it's not your money. So I'm gonna be a bit brazen and throw out a number now. The valuations now are much higher than this, and you should not. This is only so you get an idea of what it was like in Canada at that time when the market wasn't as hot. We had an offer of about $250,000 for about 30% of the company, right? So, and keep in mind, that's not Simon getting a check that he can do whatever he wants with. That's money that goes into the company funds to pay for things like marketing, hiring developers, and that can be burned down really quickly. At that time, a product which literally didn't exist 3 months ago, 3 months later, we got that offer, and we decided to not pursue it further. And I'd say that and initially I got a much worse offer. I got something which was like half as good as that. But luckily, I was in that incubator, and really, you just talk about it with the guys, like and girls there, right? You talk about it with the other co-founders, and they say, "Well, I got this valuation." They say, "I got that valuation," and I realized, hey, what the heck, our valuation is way too small. So then it's very hard to change the valuation once an investor has an idea in their mind. So we ended up going to another investor who gave us a valuation which we felt was more fitting. That's really that in a nutshell. And again, the valuations change. They go up and they go down all the time. Now valuations are far higher. Of course, costs of programmers are also higher. So you have to, again, be in that incubator to really understand your valuation.
I got it. All right, we got 2 more to get through. Number 7, get it designed professionally, faster.
Okay. I'd have to refer to exactly what this was referring to. But in sum, designers are like the hardest people to manage, and they are artists. You're managing artists, and you need to make sure that the designers are going to deliver something quickly that you like. My strategy is, I'd say, frankly, you should use a third-party designer whose work you like, and you really want to find somebody who can turn around something which is good and that turns around quickly, and they're not going to spend a million years doing it. If you're looking for a creative design, I would search 99 Designs and Dribble, or find a designer on the web who has work that you already like. Because to be honest with you, a lot of designers have trouble working out of the box and creating something totally unique. Find something that's similar to what you like and ask them to customize it, and then you'll get it right the first time.
Nice one. So then on the end, number 8, this is kind of self-explanatory, but it's a problem I think we all have. Assume things will take much longer to complete.
Great. And this is a good lesson, again, anywhere. I know a lot of people say just jump in and do it. Don't do that. It's a terrible idea. Startups are really hard, and even internal ideas always require a lot more pain and suffering than you think. So assume that. If you set aside a 2-year runway, you talk to your loved ones, maybe that's your wife or girlfriend or your parents, and you tell them, listen, I'm going to be doing this for 2 years. I'm going to need a runway. Set that up. Now, there's this human temptation to say, I am so strong. I can do this all by myself, and I'll just do it. That's really a bad idea. And I know, and look, I was totally like that. And I suffered a lot because of it. If you just engage people, if you're going to do an internal idea, even if it's in the corporate world, because you have an idea for a product line, or if you have an idea for the startup world, you will need to rely on your loved ones. And that's just, you're a human being. It takes a town to raise a child, and it takes a whole world really collectively sort of to build a society with roads and everything that allows a single human being to live. So don't think that you can do this yourself. Nobody's going to put on your gravestone, he did it all by himself. Engage your loved ones. Reach out if you want to do your own idea, and that means you're going to be coming home a little bit later every day. Talk to your wife or girlfriend about that and get them on board. Tell them this is something you're passionate about, and leave a big runway. Leave a 2-year runway because if you have a 2-year runway, you have enough room to make mistakes and learn as you go. And trust me, you'll want that 2-year runway. And if you think with that mentality, you'll be ready, because a lot of people, they jump in thinking that they'll be done in 6 months, and then their idea fails.
All right, I think we've got them all down. Thank you for that. That was fascinating. But I got to now transition that to a question. Well, one last question, and then I'm going to ask you some more about some of the stuff that you're doing personally. But that last question is, look, as the offering manager for DB2 on Cloud, is what you do day to day, and it happens to be something I'm very vested in because it's a product within my portfolio. How do you try to bring the process that you just described and the mentality that you just outlined to the product, to this product, and the teams that you work with here at IBM?
Great. So I think the number one thing is, it's funny. IBM is like the smallest company I've ever worked for. And I know that sounds nuts, but it really feels that way. Part of that is because IBM just has an amazing culture and just also the culture of caring of customers. I really underestimated how much a company can do that. But everybody's at your fingertips at a big company because you have blue pages or what have you. We almost see our large size as an excuse sometimes to be overly bureaucratic. And what you really need to do is just cut to the details. So for example, if there's a campaign in market, right, they'll say, oh yeah, here's a graph of our 7% to 70% whatever return. Don't accept it as a chart. What are the customers we closed with that campaign? If this campaign was so successful, why don't we double or triple the budget so we can grow even faster, right? Have that target in mind and always cut down to, is this action going to grow? And it's hard. You'll have in a big company, you'll have legal concerns and this and that. We published a benchmark showing that we totally blew Amazon Aurora out of the water
in terms of performance. DB2 on cloud is twice the performance of Amazon Aurora. And it would have been so easy. So many people in the organization, the majority. And I'm not just talking about, people on the sidelines, like the lawyers. I'm talking about, even people in the development and marketing organization pushing back very hard, saying, why are we going to publish this benchmark? It's too hard. It's too this. You've got to stay razor focused and say, we're publishing this benchmark, period. Same with having 99.99% uptime. People told us it's just too high, higher than the Bluemix uptime when we had DB2 on cloud, having 99.99% uptime. And you just have to stay razor focused and say, look, there's a few things we need. We don't need a whole bunch of things. We need a benchmark showing we're better than the current market leader, which we have for DB2 on cloud, and we are. We need rock solid uptime, and we have to engineer that and get it through legal no matter what. And we have to make sure that customers are confident about that. And then, we need a marketing engine, which we can really double down on, and that's working. And that might seem simple, but you know what? It's hard in a big organization, but you need to stay razor focused and not get distracted with part numbers or bureaucratic processes, or even just people trying too many things. You need to stay razor focused on a small set of things. And that's, I think, you have to wake up every day and say, what have I done to really add a zero to our revenue today? Right? Not just grow by 3% or grow by one customer. What have I done to add a zero? And if you go in with that mentality, you'll find that, first of all, you'll find that you're surrounded by a lot of things that aren't necessary, and you'll find ways to shrug those off. And second of all, you'll make sure that every day you focus only on what is really the most meaningful actions.
That's my favorite quote from you. We get into these sessions for those that are listening here, and Simon always asks, what can we do to add a zero? And that really adds clarity in the vision or innovation that you're assessing. What can you do to add a zero? I think everybody should ask that question. Just to be fair, I know you gave us a lot of the information, in terms of what it means to be a startup, et cetera. But anything else you want to add in fairness to DB2 on cloud or DB2 in general?
Sure. Well,
I want to be fair to you because I know you came on here and that's your bread and butter right now.
Yes, it is. And I just encourage people to really try out DB2 on cloud. There's a free tier we've got. You can try it. It's free forever. You just have to reactivate once every 30 days. And I think you'll be really surprised at what the DB2 engine can do. We've got it's a very, very powerful engine with a lot of features. And it'll be hard to go back once you try it. So give it a shot. And I hope that those out there have fun with it. You can try it for free. Just type in DB2 on cloud in Google and you'll be able to get right in there and try it out.
So I've just got a few questions about yourself, Simon, and I'll be quick. I noticed that you describe yourself as a coder and a startup guy. In another area, you said, I'm an entrepreneurial-minded programmer. Anything you can elaborate on any of those? Are you still coding today?
I try to. It's hard to find the time, but definitely, I still love coding. It's one of those things you just fall in love with and you just keep on wanting to do it. But right now I don't have a lot of time for that. I still think that describes myself. And even though I don't code on a daily basis, I make a point of keeping up to date with industry trends. And I think that a lot of people, I think that's important when you're, managing a product line, that even though you don't have time to do things on a daily basis, you stay up to date.
You still blogging a lot?
Not
as much as you did.
But I'd love to spend more time on that, right? But blogging is actually quite time consuming when you really get into it.
You've got some interesting blogs out there,
Yeah.
And they're all in all different kind of themes, which I find very interesting. One was the blog that we just kind of talked about in the startup blog that really caught my eye. And the following conversations that we have on a regular basis in our offering management meetings, that kind of thing. But then you've also got something that says why grilled cheese lovers are better at life. Now, what would inspire you to create that blog? Somebody must have been challenging you on how many grilled cheeses you're eating or something.
Yeah, or I lost a bet or something. Good question. And this will be maybe a good learning lesson for everybody. So interestingly, life hack, that's when I was just having fun with blogging and I want to just publish more articles and learn how to write. And so if you are accepted to Lifehack as a writer, then they have these things where, okay, this pitch is pre-approved because we know there's a market for it, right? And often this is like pretty dry stuff. It's, stuff that, so for lack of a better word, it's the stuff that people type into Google, right? And not dry content, which is why they'll just let you write it without a pitch approval. But then I saw this one, which is why grilled cheese, and I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome, and I totally believe it. I mean, so it was really fun, and that lesson is, if you're willing to take a pitch, right, then sometimes you can have a lot of fun, and B, then you can get an article published, right?
So in that article, it says grilled cheese lovers have more sex. Are you sure that that's the case?
I'm very confident.
And you've even got statistics on that. Are you sure those statistics? Did you gather those statistics yourself?
No, I didn't. I think that ultimately those probably came from the dairy industry. Because it's
very good.
Being creative with their tactics.
You are a good man. We have a lot of great conversations in offering management. I'm glad. I think others will find you fascinating as well. And you're well spoken. I think you described the startup world extremely well for those that are interested, that either they're going through it or have went through it. It'll probably resonate with many. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. You've been great. Anything that we left unsaid that you'd like to get out there?
No, just, whatever you do, remember to have fun. That's the most important thing. And thanks. I really enjoyed this. This was a great time being here.
Simon Lightstone, you're a good man. Thank you so much. And for all the listeners, again, talk to you next time. Keep coming back, please. We'll try to alter any of the topics in the ways that you'd like them to be shaped. So let us know, what you'd like to hear about. We'll get it on the docket. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Making Data Simple podcast, where we make data fun. Be sure to visit ibmbigdatahub.com/podcast to access the show notes and uncover even more great episodes. Remember, the views expressed here are those of the host and its guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of IBM. Until next time, over and out.